poppin', y'all? It is your boy Gardi3, and welcome to Coffee and Sports, the morning show. Of course, joining me just like every morning, he is the greatest co-host of all time and the pillar of Coffee and Sports. He is Mo Betta. How you doing, Mo?
Hey, good morning, Brett. Welcome, chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Say, by the way, that was great news to wake up to. I hope Nico was running. He's gone from the Dallas Mavericks. I was
Right.
so happy when I woke up and I saw it. It just felt like the writing was on the wall, but when the fans kind of stop showing up and spending their money, that's when ownership really seems to notice, and it seemed like the beginning of the end when their 25-year sellout streak was broken.
Yeah. Look, I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. But I think him being fired was already in the works. We talked about it a little bit on yesterday's show, and like to Gene's point, he brought up a point about that. Yeah, Nico wasn't the one that had the final say in the Luka trade, but maybe he sold ownership. He sold the GM on the or not the GM, but the ownerships, the team president, the idea that moving Luca, who the way he described him wasn't committed to winning or getting into best of shape, wasn't a great leader, all those kind of things. Maybe he sold them on the idea and they bought into it. And maybe the team president said, you know what, you make a strong case. Go ahead. You've got the green light to do it. But Nico, know this: if it doesn't pay dividends immediately, at some point you're going to get fired. Um, that was the way Gene saw it. The way I see it is, even if he sold them on it, the fact that he sold them on it, that says something about their basketball knowledge or lack of. Like, if you're the team president, if you're the owner, and he presents that to you, even if I'm not a basketball guy, I'm gonna go talk to a basketball guy and go, "Is that a good idea?" So the basketball guy can tell me, "Hell no, you need to fire Nico for coming up with a dumb idea like that." Um, the idea was such a pie in the sky idea. I'm gonna trade Luka Doncic, who's 25 at the time, just going into his prime, for Anthony Davis, who's been a tremendous player, will walk into the Hall of Fame, but he's on the other side of his prime and he's often injured. You made Anthony Davis the centerpiece of that trade. And the truth of the matter is, most people who know basketball ask this one basic question: how come you didn't get more? Like, the deal isn't complete unless you throw in Austin Reeves and a pick or two. And then you can throw in Max Christie at the last minute. The biggest problem was, one, to do the trade at all, but two, if you're going to do the trade, you got to come away with a lot more than what you came away with. I get it. They were really bad. So you can make the argument, well, because they were bad after the Luka trade, because AD got hurt immediately, shockingly. And then Kyrie was injured, so it allowed them to get the number one pick. They get Cooper Flag. That's terrific. That is a building block, a staple for your future. But because Anthony Davis is 32 years old and often injured, like I said, I think if I was Nico, I would have said something that probably would have got him fired by suggesting it, like, well, maybe we need to move AD. And they would have been like, no. You said he was going to be the anchor to make us a title contender, to put us back into being relevant, and now you want to move him. But yeah, look, I think firing Nico is twofold. You got rid of Nico, the fans obviously wanted it, and I'm sure that pressure impacted their decision. But by firing Nico, the door is open. You are now free for the next GM to come in and immediately start making moves for the future. Start making moves that are going to benefit and buffer the growth and development of Cooper Flag. First guy I'm trading, as soon as he's healthy, is Anthony Davis. He's on the first train smoking. He is gone. And look, I'm a Kyrie fan. I think you're a Kyrie fan, but the reality is Kyrie Irving is closer to being 34 years old, coming off of a major injury, and it would be different for me if Kyrie had a similar skill set to Steph Curry, where a lot of what he does isn't predicated on his incredible quickness and change of direction, but it is. And again, is Kyrie really part of your future? Is a 34-year-old Kyrie? How long do you think he and Cooper Flag's partnership is going to be for? Another year, two max, maybe less than that. If Kyrie isn't the Kyrie that we know him to be, so yeah, it might sound cutthroat, but if I'm moving AD, I'm moving Kyrie too.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree with that. At the end of the day, a lot of people, I've seen people still try to use the old, oh, well, next year they'll have a healthy Kyrie, Anthony Davis, Cooper Flag, and I'm just kind of on the boat of what even does a healthy Kyrie look like? What even does a healthy Anthony Davis look like? It's one of those things that they're going to be a year older. Anthony Davis didn't look particularly exciting this year before he, obviously sat with the injury. So it's one of those things that while I would get value for at least one of them. Like I get it if you want to at least hold on to one of AD or Kyrie. That could be a great mentor for Cooper Flag into these upcoming years. But you definitely at least got to move one of them and get as much assets back while you can.
Yeah, look, I agree 100%. And maybe they keep Kyrie because he's been there longer. He's a little bit more bonded to that fan base. I'm just saying, big picture, we don't know what to expect from the new or the older Kyrie. And remember, let's say Kyrie is 100% healthy and he's Kyrie again. What we know about Kyrie Irving is he's one of the most electrifying, talented player in NBA history. But what he's never been good at, he was never been good at being the best player on the team. So if you're going to thrust 19-year-old Cooper Flag into the role of being the best player and Kyrie's the sidekick, he's proven he's an effective sidekick. The only problem is I don't know if Cooper Flag is ready to be thrust into that role. That would be my concern.
No, fair enough. I guess it feels like it would almost be a good way to find out when Kyrie's back. It's one of those things where you can at least, if anything, move Cooper Flag off the ball more, which I think is something that he clearly needs to do. He's just not very great when he's the primary creator right now.
No, he's not. He's not because he's not a point guard. He's a very good secondary facilitator, but his strength on offense is he's usually the guy that finishes plays. And he's being forced to try to be a primary ball handler. That's not a strength. And one of my concerns with the roster, let's say Anthony Davis wasn't injured. With this current roster minus Kyrie Irving, they have no shot creation. Their best shot creator is actually D'Angelo Russell. And I'm not throwing shade. D'Lo is a capable player, but he's better to me as the sixth man coming off a bench. You don't want him as a starter. You certainly don't want him as your best ball handler. He is their best ball handler because of their lack of shot creation on the perimeter. What the Mavericks have is they have a lot of size, but they don't have a lot of talent in terms of wings and guards. So if Anthony Davis wasn't hurt or injured, they still wouldn't be a good basketball team.
No, you should not trade Jonathan Taylor, by the way. Thank you for tuning in, by the way. No, absolutely. Man, I think the first step for that team, though, see if you can get any value at all for Klay Thompson. I just don't. He's somebody that they got to get rid of like tomorrow. But the problem is he's been playing so bad that you can't really get any value for him right now. So I think honestly he'd be the first guy on my bucket list. If there's a way I could get positive value for him, ship him out first thing tomorrow.
Which is weird because I think Klay actually had his best game of the season last night. I think he hit 6 threes. The percentage wasn't great. I think he was like 6 for 16. But look, and maybe with Klay, Brett, the situation could be he might still be able to be an effective player in a different role, playing alongside guys, a team that has more, I guess, shot creators, scorers, facilitators. Because remember, initially, Clay came there to play with Luca, right? Um, and that blew up in his face. He didn't really play with Luca like that long, and that was his plan. So while I think he's far from what he used to be, and he look, I'm not going to argue with anybody that tells me that Klay Thompson looks washed, because he does. I feel like a change of scenery. I think Klay Thompson can still be an impactful player in a different role. It's just that when you look at Dallas, they're in a situation where it's more of a fire sale. Yeah, I'm moving Anthony Davis because I want to get assets back that can help Cooper Flag. I'm going to get back players or picks that can help me put people around Cooper Flag so he can be his best self.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's one of those things. That's kind of where I'm at with Clay too. Last night he showed he still had something, but I don't think that something is going to be long term with the Dallas Mavericks. So
Agreed.
I think he's one of those guys that as soon as his value like perks up and you see a positive trade on the table for you, I'd just be like, yep, sure, I'll take it. Why not? At this point, even if it's like, hey, a couple of seconds and a young player that could possibly be enticing, yeah, sure, why not? Say sometimes those throw-in trades are the best. That's how we got Chris Middleton.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And look, don't don't rule out a reunion in Golden State, even though he's not what he was. Don't rule it out, because if you're following what's been going on with Golden State, by the way, the Warriors coming off their biggest win of the season last night, beating the Spurs, um, they're still not happy with Jonathan Kuminga. They're not pleased with his lack of effort, his attitude. Um, I Even though he signed that extension, I'm not sure he's long for being a Warrior. I think that whether they trade him for Clay, they're going to move him. It might not be for Clay, obviously, but they're going to move Jonathan Kuminga.
Yeah, it feels like that's where this one's trending. Jonathan and Kuminga and the Warriors were just never meant to be long term. Say, and then they say they move pods out of the starting lineup. So it's just one of those things where young players in Golden State, they normally don't go hand in hand at this point.
And that's a tough place to be, because Steve Kerr looks at Steph Curry and says, "This guy's still playing at a super high level. I'm trying to max out his last couple of years at a high level to make a run." And now you put in a Jimmy Butler who still can play at a high level. So you go, I've got a number one and a number two option. Draymond Green is still a very good defender, a good facilitator. So I've got pieces to make me effective. And you bring in Kuminga and you give him more playing time as a starter. And look, offensively, he's been really, really good. Defensively, not so much. Um, Steve Kerr has always been on this timeline ever since he's become coach of the Warriors during the Steph era, where everything is about championships. And like you said, very few young players break through to become a big part of that core. Um, Obviously, what's the young man that plays for the Pelicans right now that was on the Peel did it, and played at a really high level, but he is the rare one that did it. And look, what it ended up happening to him in the bigger picture. He and Draymond had a falling out, and they moved on from him. Um, I think there's give and take in what Steve Kerr has done correct. I do believe that, yeah, Steph Curry, who by the way had 46 points last night, in that window that he's playing at a high level, and you've given him a second option in Jimmy Butler. Yeah, I still think that the idea is to try to win another ring. And when you're like that, I think you have less patience for younger players who aren't on the same timeline as your veteran core.
Say Kuminga, say Daniel Pouchman says Kuminga isn't it. I think Kuminga could be fine on in a different setting. He's playing in a system that just very much doesn't work for Jonathan Kuminga. Kuminga clearly wants to dominate the ball a little more, and rely more on his scoring rather than playing in a really pass-heavy system. I don't think Kaminga ball is a recipe for winning basketball games, but I think you put him in a situation like ship him to Sacramento, and it could make for some fun, like 20-point per game seasons. So it's one of those things where I think he's in a bad spot for him, but at the same time, I just don't think that his play style is really conducive to very much high winning basketball. So we'll see if he can change my mind on that.
I think you nailed it. Kaminga being a big fish in a small pond could be one of the top 5 or 6 scorers in all the NBA. And or he could develop into a guy who could be a good enough star to make Sacramento, let's say, a playoff contender, not a title contender, but maybe he can take them on a run like De'Aaron Fox did a couple of years ago, where they have an exciting season, they make the playoffs. I think he's capable of being the best player on a team that makes the playoff, provided you put the requisite talent around him. Do I think that he could be the kind of guy that could be the best player on a contender and go on a 6 or 7 year run? No, I don't think that's who he is. Kaminga ball really is Kaminga ball. He's going to put up numbers. I'm just not sure it's going to lend its hand in wins. But when you're a team like Sacramento, who's had so many restarts, when you look at their core right now, think about their core right now, Brett. Russ, even though to his credit, Russ has played well this season. Russ is 37. I believe DeMar's 35, Levine's 30. Dennis Schroeder's got to be 32 or 33. Like, that's their core. You got aside from Sabonis, but that you got to go out and get a young piece. Why not? You're not going to win a title this year with your current roster. Why not go out and take a swing at a Kaminga just to see what you have?
Yeah, absolutely. Which, by the way, with the Kings, I just found funny when they came out with a report that said, "Oh, Kings ownership looking to rebuild." I'm like, did you really have to sign Russ and Dennis Schroeder to 15 million a year to all of a sudden go, "Hey, wait a minute, our team might not be that good. Maybe we need a rebuild." Like, I'm just saying, why did it take like 3 bad signings later, like along to figure out that, hey, yeah, maybe we should be, getting draft capital.
That is crazy to me. They got blown out a couple of nights ago, and Doug Christie. The reports were Doug Christie yelled at his team and questioned their effort and their hearts and all those kind of things. And I thought, okay, what's going to happen? And then obviously they followed that up by getting blown out last night. So clearly the pep talk didn't work. And again, I'm going to go back to what I said. How can that pep talk work when your core is as old as it is? Like, they're old established players. Any kind of pep talk like that, I don't think that works on older players. So I'm not hating on Doug Christie because he's not the one to put together the roster. He's stuck with that roster.
No, absolutely. Hey, speaking of last night, Mo, is there a scarier team right now than the Oklahoma City Thunder? Man, no J Dub, no problem. They're still blowing teams out.
Oh my god. I'm watching the game and you can see immediately it's going to be a blowout. Like, they jumped on the Lakers defensively and just disrupted anything that Luka or Austin Reeves wanted to do. Their ability to play perimeter defense at such a high level, and not just with their starting players, the guys that come in and play at the wing or play at the 2 or the point. They have so many elite defenders, perimeter defenders. It's insane. And then you've got versatile bigs like Hartenstein and Chet that can cover ground and play in space. It's a tough assignment, and they just took the Lakers apart. It was never a competitive game. I remember at one point I'm on TikTok and I just put out "Stop the fight." Somebody stop the fight. It was a brutal display, but it also shows you when the world champs are on top of their game, especially defensively, they're hard to beat.
And I think the scariest part about the Oklahoma City Thunder right now is they're not hitting all of their open threes. Like, on wide open threes, so NBA.com describes their wide open threes being a defender being 6 or more feet away. OKC is the fourth worst team in the NBA at hitting those right now. They're at 33%. And to me, that's scary. Now, when you're talking about a team like OKC, they don't have a ton of like pure shooters. So I don't expect them to be always fully on up there in the 3-point percentage.
Right.
But at some point that 33% is going to creep up at least middle of the pack, if not just outside the top 10. So the scariest part is this could very well be the worst version of OKC we see so far this year.
You're spitting facts. Remember, their second best player, J Dub, is out. I expect he'll be back probably early in December at some point. And knowing Sam Presti, knowing that his team is in the middle of a run where they're the top dogs in the West, Sam Presti's not been one to hesitate to pull the plug on a move that he thinks that would augment his team. You pointed out something. Now look, I do think over time they have enough capable shooters where they can creep up and be at least as a team a 35 or 36% shooting team, which would make a vast difference. But I think Sam Presti will pursue a deal if he thinks he needs, like, even if it's a shooter that comes off the bench. I think Sam Presti would do that because he knows that it would, in the bigger picture, it would augment what they already do, because they have no shortage of guys that are efficient in the mid range. They have no shortage of guys that can put the ball on the floor and get to the basket. That's absent of their second best player. It's just a scary team.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, look, there's if he gets cleared from everything that's going on around him, they don't even need to give up assets to get someone maybe like a Malik Beasley, just to straight up, gun for them whenever they need to from deep. So, yeah, this is just a terrifying team. And speaking of terrifying, well, I guess more so player, the other LA team didn't have a good night either. They had to deal with Nikola Jokic, who was just on fire from the jump. 25 first quarter points, ended up with 55. Say that on Mo, he just might be one of like the hardest covers, like maybe one of like the top like hardest covers in NBA history at this point. Because how in the world do you slow down a guy like him?
He is. I think he is one of the hardest guards in NBA history, because of his versatility. Also, it's tough to guard somebody who thinks the game the way that he thinks the game. He's always a beat or two ahead of everybody else in what he's planning on doing. It doesn't help though if you're the Clippers, who are last year they were one of the better defensive teams in the NBA. This year they're one of the worst, and I mean they're around 28 or 30. They are god awful defensively. They don't stop anybody, and that shouldn't surprise anybody because we were talking about Golden State being an older team. I don't know that there's an older team in the NBA than the Clippers. They have to be the oldest team in the NBA by far if you're just talking about the guys that are in their rotation. Like, you could just go down on a who's who list of guys that are 35 and over. And then lo and behold, the guy that's like 31, 32, who's one of the younger guys, Bradley Beal's gone for the season. Gone. Out with a hip injury, gone for the year. Not that he was playing well, because he wasn't. I don't understand how Lawrence Frank isn't fired. Like, Lawrence Frank has done a lot of good things over the course of his career. What he's done as the GM with the roster construction of this Clippers team and the decisions that he's made, he should be fired. You didn't want to keep Norman Powell, and all Norman Powell did was average 25 points a game, and I thought he had an all-star caliber season, and you let him go. You got rid of Norman Powell, gone. Didn't pay him no money, and didn't replace him. You brought in Bradley Beal for a Norman Powell replacement. You had to know that wasn't going to go well. We can go back a little bit further. You didn't offer Paul George a contract, which at the time it seemed like a gangster move, but it also seemed stupid because whatever you think of Paul George at this stage of his career, he does have some type of value. Whether even if you're saying, well, Paul George now is more of a third or fourth option, that's still value. You let him go for nothing. Like, I would have come up with a sign and trade package or something. Even if I didn't get a ton, I would have got back something in return for Paul George. You just let him walk. I'm sorry. I'm looking at this roster construction. This Clipper team, they're not making the playoffs. Never mind, are they going to contend? They're not going to make the playoffs at all. They're too old, too slow. It's a horribly constructed roster, and that lies at the hands of Lawrence Frank.
Hey, just remember last year they said no that we lost to Denver because of our transition defense. So this was the answer to that: is to just get exceptionally older.
Let's get
Funniest.
old. Yeah, let's get old.
That's the funniest logic ever to me. Like, hey, yeah, we lost to Denver because of transition, so we're just gonna add every veteran under the book, and Bradley Beal, who moves like a seasoned veteran at this point, like he's 37. So it was just bad logic from the jump, especially with the message that they were trying to send. So
Look, Nico get fired the other day. I think Lawrence Frank will last a little bit longer because while he might be a great businessman and terrific at business, Steve Ballmer's not a very smart man when it comes to basketball. So he'll probably let Lawrence Frank stay on longer. But what Steve Ballmer needs to do as an owner, one, get a new GM, but two, you have to do the hard thing. The Kawhi Leonard era in LA is over, and you need to move on from it. It's time for a fire sale. I would say tank and use your picks, but you can't do that because you sacrifice so many of your picks in the Paul George trade. So they just need to do a fire sale and move on and try to get assets that can help them for the future. Because how do you stay afloat with a core that's 35 and older? You don't.
you trade them for younger assets.
Right,
That's
but
it.
the only way that works is you have to deal with some of the and I'm not going to call them out by names, but you would have to deal with some of the not so bright franchises in the NBA and sell them on like, well, you're getting former MVP James Harden and this and that, and Kawhi is a two-way player and a Finals MVP. Like, I guess you can sell them on what they used to be, and maybe that might work. But the the idea that Lawrence Frank would try to go forward with this roster, that's terrible.
Yeah, it feels like that the only two guys who have great value right now for that team, obviously James Harden would still have great value for them. And you can probably still get some really good value out of Kawhi. And after that, it's really a toss up. So we'll see how long they continue forward with this roster, but I can't imagine it's for that long if they keep playing like this.
I agree. Look, I would argue that Zubac might have the most value.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Say also with the Nuggets too, they're kind of scary in the sense that Cam, Cam Johnson's been getting off to a slow start. Apparently, he's been dealing with kind of a shoulder issue. So we'll kind of see how they look once he starts actually knocking down his open threes because he's not going to shoot like sub 25% from three forever.
It's 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 kind of impressive that they did that move and Cam Johnson has played the way he's played, and yet they're still at the top, one of the top teams in the West. Um, you're right. Look, if Cam Johnson gets himself right, I expect him at the end of the day, he's not going to score more per game than Porter Jr. I expected him to be around that 16, 18 points per game level. But if you get him back to where he could be, that's just another weapon in the arsenal of a really good basketball team whose franchise player is as good as anybody in the NBA. Like Joker rarely has games where he takes 20 or more shots, but when he's coming out aggressive like that, like he did last night, it just reminds people of how dominant a player he can be when he wants to be.
After that first quarter, Mo, because you knew he wasn't going to keep up the volume the entire game. He's going to slow it down. That's just kind of normally the Jokic thing to do. Even when he is aggressive, he just like ramps it down so he can get his teammates involved. Man, but I kind of low key wish that he would just for fun one game take like 30 or 40 shots because it feels like he's so good at scoring and he's just so efficient at it. He can put himself up there in the record books for scoring if he wanted to. I feel like he could challenge in that,
You think you can
seven.
challenge? Go ahead. I thought you were going to say around 80, maybe challenge Kobe on that 81.
Yeah, I'd say he could get at least 70, but I think he could challenge Kobe for 81 if he really locked in and decided one game he's shooting 30, 40 shots.
I'd be here for that. I'd like to see what Joker looks like. It's funny because we were talking about Cade Cunningham a couple of nights ago taking, I think he took like 45 or 46 shots. If Joker took 46 shots, what would that look like? Because that's a scary thought. Because I'd have to assume, let's say he's playing at his normal pace, getting to his spots. The man's he's gonna be upwards of 80 plus points.
Yeah, like that's kind of the scary part is last night he obviously got to 55 and he took 23 shots. He was 18 of 23. That man hardly missed. Now, I'm not going to lie. That whole Cade Cunningham game must have been the greatest thing of all time. You know, you got to respect it when a star player just decides that they're going to empty the clip. And that's exactly what Cade did there. No Jay Ivey, no Tobias Harris. He didn't have a secondary creator with him, so he just kind of said, hey, you know what? I'm going to shoot, and I am going to shoot often and a lot. So, hey, at the end of the day, it worked out for the Pistons. They got the win.
Right. That I was getting ready to say. He didn't have the best or the most efficient game for Cade Cunningham, but he did what he had to do in terms of getting his team that win, and that's all that matters.
Do y'all ever see anyone breaking Wilt Chamberlain's record of 101? You know what the funny part is? Sure. I think that's actually very possible. I guess not very, but I think it's possible. Like, with the amount of talents in the league now that can score the ball as well, we were just talking about Jokic getting to 55 on 18 to 23. Like, I think it's possible. But that being said, it's also would require, like, the perfect situation of a team, you know, they have to still be in the game with the guys putting up that much scoring volume.
Right.
So you can't pull them. They need to be drawing free throws. It would be a challenge, but I don't think it's impossible.
I don't think it's impossible either. The funny part is, though, I think if it is going to be broken, it won't be broken by an American player. It's going to be broken by somebody like Wemby or Joker or Luka or even Giannis. But I don't see an American player currently in this current NBA that's a remote threat to breaking that record.
Yeah, I like I said that's the guy I keep looking at for if anybody's going to come close to that. Like it really does feel like it's someone like Jokic, but he just doesn't shoot enough. You need somebody that's just willing to empty the clip on a consistent basis. So,
or like you said, maybe it's a game in which, as long as the game remains competitive and they need Joker's offense, then he'll keep. I think it'll make him be more aggressive. Because Joker's the kind of guy that if like last night, he could have went for more points, but they blew him out. So obviously he didn't keep playing. I'd like to see what it looks like if they needed him to get more buckets in a game to where it was just a shootout. I do think Joker has the potential to get there. Like, maybe not the 100, but maybe 80 plus. Because you're right, he won't shoot that much. But I think Luka shoots that much. He could do it. Wemby's young. He doesn't chuck up shots like that. But because he's young, if he got in a zone early and they were going back and forth, I think he would go for it. I think his teammates would push him to go for it.
It'll be like the Devin Booker game where he was close to 70 for some. Even though they were losing by a ton, their Suns were just fouling and doing everything they could to get him to 70.
Yeah. Look, like I said, it's a short list of players right now that I think that could do that. Although I'll throw in a couple of wild cards. Let me throw in a guy like Tyrese Maxey. He's a wild card. He can get hot. He's already got a terrific open court game. He's terrific off the dribble with that quick first step. He's an improved 3-point shooter, gets to the foul line. I can see him doing it. And let me throw in. I want to say, even if we were talking about how Cade had a bad shooting night per se, but could Cade Cunningham potentially do it? I think he could. Cade's not even a really good 3-point shooter. If he ever becomes a consistent 3-point shooter to go with what he already does, yeah, that would open up his game even more. So I think Cade could. I'm not ruling out SGA, by the way. I'm not saying he could. I'm not saying SGA couldn't. I just think that he's one of those guys that oftentimes OKC blows teams out, and so he's chilling. But could SGA do that? Yeah, I can see SGA being able to do that. There are a few guys that definitely could be in that 80 range. There's a couple of guys I know for sure could do the 100 thing if they were more aggressive. I'd like to see somebody go for it, Brett. Honestly, I would like to see somebody. Look, records are meant to be broken, and it would be exciting to see that live. That you can say, I was watching that night when Joker went for $110.
Say, yeah, it. No, absolutely, and then we can finally get an 100-point game recorded. So, because apparently we have recordings of everything else, just not that Wilt 100-point game. So,
Right.
say no, yeah, absolutely. I would love to see somebody challenge for it too. And you know what's funny? My qualms about Cade Cunningham when he tries to score the basketball isn't even about his 3-point shot per se, Mo. I've never seen somebody so like with his size and athleticism get so skittish around the rim. That's kind of where he terrifies me at. Like, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like he's rushing shots, but at the end of the day, like a game where he's took 45 shots, it didn't surprise me so much that he shot so poorly. Just because he's so like skittish around the rim, and I'm not sure why. He's still a great player. That doesn't take away from how great he is, but I would love to see him become a more consistent rim finisher. That was definitely a takeaway I had from his 45 shot performance.
That that's a fair point, and you're right. It's kind of surprising that he's not better at finishing around the basket because one of his strengths is his size and strength. Like he's a legit 6'7", 6'8", with the ability to get to the basket, and he's physically stronger than most wing players. The fact that he's not as good as a finisher, it is kind of surprising. And maybe he's trying to correct that by attacking the basket harder, like a few nights back when they played the Sixers when he dunked on Drummond. You got to finish that way. Maybe not try to be not finish with floaters or with finesse, but go with power.
Yeah, absolutely. Say, do the old Anthony Edwards and John Moran method. Just who needs finesse? Just try to power over everybody. And say, I'm looking forward to this John Moran saga to be over in Memphis because you know what's kind of unfortunate about that? I feel like that it's taking away from the young guys that are doing well. Shout out to Cedric Coward. I see you.
Good.
He's balling out. Like we got some young guys balling out. But we just kind of keep getting distracted by this whole saga with Ja and company. So I hope they figure out that stuff at the top sooner rather than later because I think it's taken away from some young guys that are actually playing well in Memphis.
I think it's impacting the entire team, but you can tell with his play, whatever's going on affecting John Morant. I mean, he's been subpar the last few games. It's almost like he's checked out. There's definitely a disconnect there. And I'm sure when you're John Morant, you're tired of being asked, have you asked for a trade? Or do you expect to be traded or anything in that vein? Um, I said it before. They're a small market team. So parting is hard in one sense because one, he's a hometown guy, but another thing is you're most times when you trade a star like this, you don't get a star in return. They don't go star for star. And so when you trade a John Morant, usually you're trading him for assets that'll help you down the line. And if I'm Memphis, like I said, I feel like this. I'm going to be steadfast in this. If you move off John Morant, then you're signaling an out and out rebuild. If I'm moving off John Morant, I'm moving off Jaren Jackson because Jaren Jackson is a sidekick for however people want to take it. He's a really good basketball player, but you can't build a team around Jaren Jackson. And if you're not going to have John Morant, you might as well move off Jaren Jackson as well.
It feels like the best player they could get for a John Moran trade. is obviously they can maybe pluck the best player off of a tanking team would be my guess, and the player I'm referencing is obviously maybe like you could swing like Laurie Markkinen from Utah. I think that's just possible, but yeah, at this point, I would take a nice package of young players and future picks and at least get this whole thing kickstarted. Either you got to move on from the coach who he doesn't like, or John. When we're running into problems with two different coaches now, at this point, I'd just probably move on from Ja and kind of restart. Say I still think Ja can be a productive player. It's very clear that that marriage with Memphis is over, and he needs to break it off and move on.
Yeah, I think both need a fresh start with John Morant. This isn't about is he still talented? Of course he is. He's young. Josh 26. He's still a young man. I think the holdup really is where you trade him and what you get back in return. Because when you're the franchise, you're moving off of him because you no longer want his services, but you have to find a franchise that goes, yeah, we want Ja. The question is, what do you want in return, though? And that's when it becomes difficult. And where would he fit at? Because I was looking at some of the contenders. I don't know on what contender he could fit at. Because remember, he is a little ball dominant, and he's not really a great shooter per se. So he has a unique skill set. I first thought Atlanta would be a good place if you thought about swapping out him for Trey Young, right? Um, they're different in how they do it. Trey Young is more of a volume scorer. I, I think Ja could be a little bit more of a facilitator, and he definitely doesn't shoot as much, and that would be interesting. Maybe the pairing of Ja Morant and Jalen Johnson would be exciting, and maybe it could work. I don't know. I just know that because of his skill set, finding a home for him with a contender is going to be a lot more challenging than it would be when you're trying to trade him to like the usual suspects, Sacramento, Charlotte, the Wizards. It's always easy to move a star to the bottom dwellers because the bottom dwellers they're always buyers. There's a reason why they're always buyers. So I would like to see him on a good team, on a contending team. I don't know if it's going to end up that way though.
Oh, we say Kyle pointing out one of our favorite stats to look at: Jared Jackson rebounds.
Yeah, yeah.
Say two rebounds. You know what? Good thing they have Jock Landell out there to grab more for him, I guess.
I
Say
that's a great. I've been tooting that horn for the longest, Kyle. Jared Jackson is. Remember, I want to remind people he's a 4-5 guy. He can play the 4 to 5, but he rebounds like a 2 guard. Sometimes not as good as a 2 guard. I, I know what he is as a defender, especially as a weak side defender. But offensively, I don't. He can give you 18 to 20 a night, but defensively, a big part of defense, we always bring this up, is you got to end the possession. You end the possession by being a terrific defensive rebounder. He's a horrible defensive rebounder.
yeah. It's one of those things where he can play the five, but you can never do it full time with him just because of how bad of a rebounder he is.
Yeah.
So he can only do that whole Jaron at the five thing in like spurts. It's the reason why they drafted like Zach Edey so high. They just need somebody that can end a possession. I think an interesting idea for John Morant, Mo, and this is the team we've been talking about needing a point guard and more playmaking. Do you think that a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves can make a push for him as a John Ant backcourt and that kind of is able to suck away the rest of the Mike Conley minutes?
Yeah, I it's weird to say this because he's not a great range shooter, but I think a guy like Anthony Edwards and John Morant, I'm thinking about their personalities, Brett. I think their personalities would work because I think they would push each other. I think they would have their own, if you want to call it, competition within the team. You know what I'm saying? Like I could see them pushing each other. You have two great attackers on the perimeter. And Anthony Edwards, maybe he can overcompensate for the fact that Ja's not a great range shooter, but Anthony Edwards has become a much better 3-point shooter. I think it would be an electric move for Minnesota. Look, right now the current version of Mike Conley is giving you something like I want to say 6 points a game and 3 assists. Like John Morant, if he's just pedestrian, is going to give you 20 points and 6 assists. I think it would be a great move for Minnesota to pursue. The only question is what can they give Memphis to make Memphis goes, yeah, this works for us, because Memphis realizes they're giving up an all-star player, an all NBA-ish kind of player in Ja. So I think the best thing that the Timberwolves can offer in return are picks and maybe a couple of young pieces that they have on the roster. One of the pieces would have to probably be Jade McDaniels.
Say that would be the tough part, because they'd probably try to do this whole thing with obviously not giving up Bam or Jaden. So it really comes down to would the Memphis Grizzlies value, draft picks from the Timberwolves that high, and Rob Dillingham would, absolutely have to be on his way out. Do they value just like the younger talent of the Timberwolves? Because they would try to get this whole thing done without moving on from at least Ann and Jaden.
Oh, I'm sure.
And Rudy. So
I'm sure
they just desperately need Rudy for his rim protection still. I think that's one thing that's been abundantly clear, because say now that the 5 minutes just are not working at all so far to start the year.
Yeah, I think you're right. So. We think about the movement and the trade where we're talking about the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves. I think to make it work to where everybody will be happy, you actually need 3 teams.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And yeah, you're right. You're right, Kyle. They want picks to get their next core, and that's why you got to get a third team involved.
Right.
Because obviously it's going to be mainly contenders that want Ja, because let's be real, if you're a contender and you have a chance to get Ja Morant at its lowest value, why wouldn't you do that? But at the same time, Memphis is still going to want picks that could possibly help their future. So, that's going to be a really brutal lottery team to watch. So I'm not going to lie. If they do trade Ja, at least Ja can still present you with that couple of highlight reel plays a game. Say going from a Ja Morant led, team that had some, spark to it, watching Jaren Jackson led basketball, that might be some brutal hoops. But you know what? I still think some young guys like, Cedric Howard would have more opportunities to break out, which could be a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, look, I feel like instead of having a year where they've underachieved, if you move off John Morant and you focus on the young talent that you have and let them play and develop them, I think you can sell the fan base on a developmental year. You can sell the fan base on we got back these assets for Ja. So we do have a future. The future is bright. I think that's the way to go. That's the way to run with this. And I look, they may very well hold on to Jaren Jackson. I think teams value Jaren Jackson. I don't think they value him the way the Grizzlies did. I think a lot of teams look at Jaren Jackson and go, yeah, we'll bring him in, but I think they would bring him in to be their third guy. I think Jaren Jackson as your third option, you're probably a legitimate contender.
Say fair enough. And obviously we had Nico out of there, and well, I wouldn't be shocked if before, maybe even today ends that we had Willie Green out of New Orleans at this point, because it's clear that the Pelicans, players are tuning him out. So I think it's beyond time that he gets out of that situation.
I think I think you're calling your shot on this one, partner. And I'm not rooting against Willie Green. I like Willie Green. He's been in tenure there for quite some time, but I think that core that he has, and a lot of these guys are around 24 and under. I don't think they hear him anymore. And it's not all on him, by the way. If your franchise player is a Zion Williamson and he's constantly in and out your lineup, I think that disrupts the notion of any consistency on your team. If your second best player is Trey Murphy, who you and I both are fans of, but he's in and out the lineup. That is the problem with their best players is they're in and out the lineup because that's their only consistently. They're consistently in and out the lineup. I look at the Pelicans and I feel like they should be sellers. And I know they're not going to be sellers because it's much easier to get rid of Willie Green and replace Willie Green than it would be to replace Zion Williamson or a Trey Murphy. The only question is, I don't know where they go for their next head coach. I don't think it's on their current roster. And they do have talent. I just think they have the wrong guy as their franchise player.
It's one of those things that, I think there's talent there. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say there's an abundance of talent there, but there's definitely some talent there. It just, it's just unfortunate how everything turned out because, when you're starting with the wrong franchise guy, it kind of has a trickle down effect. Say, not to mention other little deciding factors like Herb Jones he never developed on offense. It feels like at all. Still an elite defender. Love watching some Herb Jones defensive highlights, but the problem is I don't think there's been any Herb Jones offensive highlights ever since he came into the league. So, and then when your depth is guys like DeJounte Murray who looked cooked in Atlanta before you even got him, and now you're asking a guy to come off a major injury to all of a sudden start contributing at a high level. It just feels like this is a team of just very odd pieces and parts, and you really just got to figure out who are your keepers, and move on from the rest because there's just a lot of awkward fits on this team right now. Keep Fears, obviously keep Fears and Queen. Probably keep like someone like Trey Murphy, and maybe look to move on from the rest.
I look, if I were the GM there, that would be what I'd be selling to the ownership, the president of operations, that we need to move off some of these guys. Look, Jordan Poole's a really good player, but I think we all know that what Jordan Poole is really good at, that his NBA role, like everybody has an NBA role or a lane, Jordan Poole's NBA lane is a six man. He's a terrific six man. He showed you in Washington, which typical Washington make that kind of move, that they would go out and go, we're going to make Jordan Poole the centerpiece of our team, and that's why they are who they are. But Jordan Poole has a lane as a six man. I think I'd be sellers. I'd move on for Jordan Poole. I think I would find a way to try to move on for DeJounte Murray. They'll never do this, but I would move on from Zion Williamson the next time he's healthy. I would move on from him. I'm not saying Trey Murphy is a franchise player, but I am saying because he's still 23 or 24 years old, that he can be a building block to when you get your next guy who could be the franchise player. I think Herb Jones, I think he just plateaued as a player, that he didn't develop more under the Pelicans. Although I will say this, Herb Jones' value, he's got a higher value than, say, a guy that's on my Lakers. He's a better basketball player than Jared Vanderbilt. I would still value Herb Jones for what he is. I think Herb Jones is still an elite defender who's actually improved as a three-point shooter. I think we thought he was going to be just a better all-around player, but I think what he actually is, and there's nothing wrong with this, is Herb Jones is a 3-and-D guy. He has value as a 3-and-D guy. I would move on from Herb Jones as well. Like, I think they should be sellers.
Say no, fair enough. Fair enough. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go from here, but I think it's just very clear at this point that change just needs to happen over in New Orleans. And move on to the young guys. And you know what's awkward though? You know what makes this whole thing awkward? They can't really sell yet because they traded away their unprotected first for next year.
They did.
So you're in a situation where, all this sounds really good, and then you go, well, they kind of traded away their first for Derek Queen, so they don't really have an incentive to suck this year. So,
and I like Queen, but to make that move to get rid of that pick for him, I don't know if he's that guy. I think he's a legitimate NBA player, but if I'm gonna make that type of move, I have to be certain that I bring in the right guy. I don't know that Derek Queen will ever be an all-star caliber player.
I will say though, the one thing that I was puzzled that Willie Green did, or just more so didn't do, was give Derek Queen minutes right away. And it's funny because a lot of people are like, "Well, he's not in the game because defensive purposes." And I'm like, "Well, I mean, that's clearly why you're starting 36-year-old DeAndre Jordan off the street, right? Because he's such a lockdown defender." It puzzled me he didn't get minutes sooner, but I give Derek Queen credit. When he's gotten some run, he obviously looks the part of a rookie, but he can do some special thing with the ball in his hands. He's got some great moves for being such a big guy. So
You got
I
great footwork.
say got great footwork, got some fun ball handling moves. I'm looking forward to seeing him, and apparently Brody is too. So say I say, yeah, it's going to be a great time. And of course, I'm looking forward to seeing what the Bucks do. They obviously just dropped one to Charlotte, but you know what? Ryan Rollins continues to impress. So,
I like him. I like him a lot.
hey, my favorite part of that Wizards trade, Jordan Poole and Ryan Rollins both went to the Wizards, and we ended up with Ryan Rollins. So, I'm glad everything worked out the way it did for that deal.
Let me ask you something. I know it's early and we're like 10, 11 games into the season. Do you think that your team might be aggressive at the trade deadline to look to bring in more shooting, or do you think that you guys are good with the way the roster is constructed right now?
I'd say I'll give Horst credit for one thing. I think he's just always looking to be aggressive. I think that we're going to be an aggressive team at the deadline. I think as long as Giannis is on the roster, Horst is always looking for the next move to make.
Hmm.
And that's one thing, even though I've had my frustrations with him at times, I got to give him credit for. No matter what our situation looks like, he always finds a way to make that next move. So I think that Milwaukee's going to be aggressive, and I think that they're going to be looking for possibly for some wing help. I think it's clear that we can use a guy that you give you an example, a guy like Andrew Wiggins, a guy who had some size to him, that's athletic enough to play some of these bigger wings, and maybe he's got some juice to him now. Can we afford a guy like Andrew Wiggins? I don't think so, but I think we'll be looking for some wing help that can provide some more size on defense and that can shoot the three ball from out there.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you brought up that name. I'm happy for Andrew Wiggins. I'm happy for Wiggs that he's kind of found his NBA lane where he's made himself into one of the better wing defenders who can also give you 16 to 18 points per game offensively. Like Wiggs has turned out to be a guy who's had a really good career. When you think about where he was drafted and the expectations, and I'm looking at him now. Obviously, his stint in Golden State literally changed his whole career around. But I'm looking at Andrew Wiggins as the guy that turned into a really good basketball player. And I think that at age 30, he's still incredibly athletic, still playing at a high level. He would be a great addition to any contender if they pursued him.
Yeah, yeah, that's a name that I would love Milwaukee to at least look at. I don't think Miami would make that deal with us, and Pat Riley's going to ask for a grandfather offer for him, but it's definitely a move that I'd love for us to make. So, hey, that being said, Mo, hey, that's all the time we have for this morning. Anything you want to add before we get up on out of here?
No, you know how it goes. You and I start talking about hoops, the time flies. Appreciate the chat, the energy, Kyle and company, everybody for coming through. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you guys check out all the great content that we have at Wire Wire Network. Wire Network, we appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. And say definitely we'll see you a couple times next week. I will let you guys know my days off next week are Tuesday and Thursday, so we'll have and one back to its normal time on Thursday. Might be doing Meaty Boys on a Tuesday, so we'll we'll definitely check us out next week. So thank you guys for tuning in, and that being said, enjoy the rest of your night.